Hello and welcome in to the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, joined by senior writer Mike Craven, who is back from the shoe. He was in the building for Texas falling to Ohio State 14-7. Texas becomes the first AP number one team to lose the season opener since 1990. Craven, how do you divvy up percentages of this blame pie? It's an overcooked blueberry pie. How are we slicing it up and giving blame out? Is it Arch Manning entering the fourth quarter with 38 yards and interception? Is it Sark's conservative play calling with runs all the time on first and second down and very little pre-snap motion, in my opinion? Or is it wide receivers and tight ends getting zero separation?
Well, I'm going to go off the board and say it's the red zone.
Also, that's a fair answer.
You know, they go 0 for 2 in the red zone, 0 points despite getting inside Ohio State's 10-yard lines twice. And it's just, one of those drives was a 15-play drive that ended in 0 points, and the second was a 13-play drive that ended in 0 points. And so to have those kind of, if you score on one of those, it's 14-14 and you're going to overtime. And so it's an extenuation of something we've seen before. This isn't just a new problem for Texas. This is one that they've had. They were 54th nationally last year in red zone touchdown percentage and 101st in overall red zone scoring percentage. The offense was 120th in red zone touchdown percentage in 2023. They were 90th in red zone scoring percentage or at 65th in red zone scoring percentage touchdowns in 2022. So something that's been a bugaboo for this offense. And in the offseason, I think the assumption was CJ Baxter's back. He's a big running back. Arch Manning can run the ball. He's a big 6'4", 220-pound quarterback. This will get fixed. DJ Campbell, they're bigger up front. They're more of a plowing offensive line instead of the one that maybe was more technical the last couple of years. And in the first test against maybe the best defense that they're going to see, they failed it in a way that they had failed the test previously. And to me, that's the most concerning part and where I would lay the blame.
I picture my analogy for Sark as a play caller is like that horse meme of the painting of a horse where it's like the hind legs are just like beautiful Vincent van Gogh style painting. And that's like Sark from in between the 20s, like the 80 yards down the field until he gets to the red zone. And then it turns into like a 3-year-old drawing a horse. Why? I feel like we blamed Quinn Ewers a lot last year for a lot of things, but the red zone, right? And I think you and I agreed, like, Quinn Ewers wasn't a very fast processor, and that could be why the red zone issues keep rearing their head. But now, first game with Arch Manning, and we'll get to Arch Manning, but they go over 2 in the red zone. Like, is this kind of a Sark issue, do you think? Or is this, again, the personnel just wasn't executing like they should have?
Probably both. Yeah, I think we have enough sample size here to say there's something going on with Sark and this offense in the red zone. If you gave him truth serum, however, I think he'd talk about not having a quarterback that can go make that play with his eyes pre-snap. We saw Arch be late on multiple throws, including the interception. The one that ended up not being an interception also was a very late throw. Mm-hmm. So I think he was swimming. I think he was confused. I think Sark thought the best plan of attack was just running straight forward and using his legs. Like once he got into the red zone, it felt like for the most part, it was all run plays, especially that one that ended on the 4th and 1 sneak that just kind of felt discombobulated. And I wonder if it's just become a mental thing at this point. But Texas has not been good at the red zone. They were not good again in the red zone on Saturday. And in small margin games against teams that have the same type of bodies that you do, executing in the red zone, not turning the ball over, having fewer penalties, especially on the road. That's how you win games. And Texas lost all of those boxes.
I think it's a conversation worth having now about Steve Sarkisian, the fact that he's 3 of 8 against top 10 teams, 3 and 8, I should say. And then I was looking on Twitter X, Billy Lucci said, Sark's offense scored 15 and 19 points against UGA last year. 14 and 7 against Ohio State, and then he threw in 17 against Texas A&M. We probably don't need A&M in this one, but point being, like, Sark's offenses are kind of turtling in these big time games Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think one of it is big time games means you're playing really good opponents and it's hard to beat those.
Of course.
And so, but the 3 wins aren't, Alabama in 2023 is a huge win. That Alabama team was really good. They played for the SEC championship. Like that one holds up. But the other 2 top 10 teams that they've beaten is one an Arizona State team in the playoffs that had won the Big 12. And the other one was that Michigan team in the Big House in week 2 that ended up going 7-5 in the regular season.
Paper Tiger.
That Alabama win in 2023 is probably the only quote unquote marquee, win. He's had other big wins, beating Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game, et cetera. But I think, he's struggled in big moments in big games, right? With the red zone. And in those type of games against the top 10 teams, like the Georgias, like the Ohio States, it comes down to the small margins. It comes down to how you execute in the big moments. That's typically in the red zone. I think that they're connected. I think if Texas got better in the red zone, they win at least half of those games in a way that they should. You're not going to win 8 out of 11 probably, but he should probably be 6-5. I don't know the math there. What is it? 3 and 8's 11. Yeah, 6-5 or 5-6. And had he been better in the red zone, I think they win 2 or 3 of those games that they didn't, including maybe the one on Saturday.
Oh, for sure the one on Saturday, because you were to tell me before the game, Texas holds Ohio State to 203 yards and 14 points. I'd say Texas won that game easy, and it was probably a blowout, and instead Texas loses because the offense was inept. I was thinking about a theory about Sark, and let me know if I'm just way overthinking this, but like Steve Sarkisian tush pushing on the 1 yard line. I felt like he did that because of the toss play on the 1 yard line last year, where Ryan Day catches a lot of flack for like having Lou Holtz living rent free in a Barca lounger in his head, for saying that Ohio State's a soft program. And then he tries to like out Michigan to win those games. I felt like Sark did the same thing on Saturday.
I wonder if Sark's deal in the red zone is overthinking it. Because from my understanding of what he said after the game was he basically didn't want Ohio State to be able to sub in their big package. He felt like he had the advantage based on the personnel of Ohio State on the field, and he wanted to run that play against their defensive line and linebackers before they could load up. I think if given another opportunity, he would have just gotten in the huddle, called the same play, got his big package in there, and just went big on big and see if they could win that. The way Ohio State did on 4th down on their touchdown in the first half, right? Where it was just, we're going to load up, we're going to call the play again, see if you can stop it for the 4th time. If you can, good for you. I think that's what he should have done in retrospect. But with the toss last year, with kind of the hurried up, discombobulated sneak that happened, he almost psyched his own team out. Like he was trying to get Ohio State off guard, but like he got his own offense off guard and like kind of hurried them up. It didn't look like they were in a rhythm and all set for that play. And so I do wonder if a guy who is so good at his script, who is such an offensive wizard, who knows how to attack these defenses, if he just kind of overthinks it sometime in the red zone and doesn't let his Jimmies and Joes just go be Jimmies and Joes and go score some points.
All right, speaking of Jimmies and Joes, let's have the Arch Manning conversation. Let me say the positive first. The 4th quarter, he was throwing dimes. All right. And because I'm saying the positive first, because we're going to get negative here and we're going to call it like it is. I'm going to zig while everyone zags. I was actually more impressed with Arch Manning after Saturday. Okay. The Livingstone drop, I thought was a great ball. I know Ryan Wingo was open on a slant. I thought that was a great ball. The Livingstone touchdown was a great ball. The Endries ball on the wheel route was dropped in the bucket.
Yeah, that'll be on an NFL draft clip thing one day when Arch gets drafted. Like that was an elite throw.
But the first 3 quarters are going to lead first take on Monday because woof, it was tough. I mean, he had 38 yards and an interception entering the 4th quarter. It was from the very first pass where he skipped it, like on an open out route where Sark schemed the guy open. That to me looked like nerves. That looked to me like him not just letting it rip. What did you make of his performance, Craven?
I was underwhelmed. I think that's probably an understatement. He looked bad. He did not look like a player who had been in the system for 3 years. He did not look like a player who has played some meaningful snaps in big moments. Second half against Georgia, he scored a touchdown against A&M. He was on the field for a big first down against Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. And Julian Sayin looked like the better quarterback.
Julian Sayin looked ice cold in a good way. Like he had nerves of steel.
Not only did Manning didn't look as technically sound as I thought a Manning would look.
His sidearm stuff.
His arm slot's weird. The footwork isn't all there, which is why he underthrew and overthrew some passes when guys were open, because he's just not on platform. Like stuff that you would think a football royalty raised in this godlike family of quarterbacks who has a passing academy every single year, you wouldn't think that would be the thing,
Mm-hmm.
But he just didn't look comfortable. He didn't look good. And I had this conversation, with a bunch of friends who were texting me during the game and after the game. And it's like, Sark is so conservative. Why is Sark being so conservative? Well, I'm not a genius, but if a coach is not known for being the most conservative guy in the world, and then he becomes pretty conservative with a certain quarterback playing, don't you think there's a reason for it? Sure. I guess I would say Sark's conservativeness was the first red flag. Mm-hmm. Hey, he doesn't trust this guy. And very early in the game, you knew Sark has the training wheels on. Sark is not going to let this quarterback go and lose him the foot. He did not have faith in him. And at first I was like, is it the offensive line that he doesn't trust? Is it Arch Manning that he doesn't trust? As the game went on, you realized it was Arch. And honestly, Manning got better when they kind of went back to spread, RPO, keep it simple, make a read or two. Early on, when he was trying to do pro-style offense, kind of get under center a few times and really kind of win in that way, it just felt like Arch wasn't ready for that moment.
Okay, but where I am going to question Sark is your critique of Manning about not being on platform, but having weird footwork, weird arm slots. That's the same thing we said about Quinn Ewers.
Sure.
And at what point, Sark, if you're a quarterback whisperer, and I know Sark is an offensive guru, and he has proven that, but you are a quarterback whisperer, Sark. Why are your two number 1 overall 5-star quarterbacks coming into their first actions and having weird footwork and weird arm slots?
Yeah, that's a great question. It just didn't look how I thought it would. I did not think he was going to throw for 320 yards and 4 touchdowns against Ohio State.
Yeah.
But I thought it'd be because Ohio State was really good, not because Arch Manning was bad. And Arch Manning was bad against Ohio State. That doesn't mean he's going to be bad forever. But he was bad on Saturday against Ohio State. And if Texas gets that kind of performance, they're not making the college football playoff. That defense is elite, but you got to go to Florida. You got to play Oklahoma in the state fair. You got to go to Georgia. You're not getting in if you lose 2 of those 3 games because you're not going to have the wins to offset them.
So are you changing your national championship prediction on Texas after that game? Or are you saying hey, Matt Patricia at Ohio State, just absolutely schemed Arch. And look, 2 things about Matt Patricia. The pencil in the ear with a laminated sheet is dumb. You don't need the pencil in the ear anymore. But also the blitz packages he was throwing at Arch were crazy. He had a hell of a call.
Yeah, I underestimated his ability to install all that quickly. And I know he had a whole offseason, but just with that many new faces on your defense, I thought that they would be pretty vanilla. And they weren't. They were very exotic. He definitely outcoached Sark. That defense outplayed Arch. I don't think they see another unit like that again. Maybe on the road to Georgia, Oklahoma's going to have a really good defense. But you're not going to see Caleb Downs and just that type of athleticism again, probably, except for the Georgia game. I don't think I would pick Texas to win the national championship sitting here right now today. Now, maybe in a month and a half, they've turned it around. Arch Manning's balling. That was a blip in the radar. That defense is obviously national championship level. They can get there. I don't think Arch has to be the Heisman Trophy winner for Texas to win a national championship.
But he can't do that.
But he's got to be better than that. He's got to be better than that.
I feel for Arch in the sense that I'm sorry for him that this debut had to happen in the age of AI, because Twitter X was on fire. Like, the Arch AI memes in a Best Buy shirt were flying around.
The commercials didn't help.
No.
That didn't help at all. I think what concerned me the most was like the lack of verticality. Like when Quinn Ewers was the quarterback, when people were clamoring for Arch, a lot of it was, well, he's going to take the top off of the defenses. He's going to push the ball down the field. He's going to make throws that Ewers doesn't have the arm strength to make. It's going to get them more explosive, all of that. Like Ryan Wingo is going to have this huge year. He didn't have a pass completion over 10 yards till his 17th attempt of the game. 10 of his 17 completions went to running backs or tight ends. Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore combined for, I had it down here somewhere, like 4 catches for 41 yards.
Mm-hmm.
There was just no explosive plays to make Ohio State respect kind of the big play down the field potential. And then that made this game just a phone booth. And it's hard to beat a team as good as Ohio State in a phone booth. Like, you have to have the threat of at least going deep. Julian's saying put the threat of going deep into Texas's defense, and they had to play for that. Ohio State never did. And that, I think, is a big reason why the Buckeyes won.
So you were in the building. You can see the wide receivers a lot better from your point of view in the press box. Like, was Texas wide receivers not getting any separation, or were there guys running open that Arch just missed?
I think there were some guys running open that Arch missed, but not necessarily because they were winning one-on-one matchups.
Mm-hmm.
I think they had been schemed open and Arch went with a different read or didn't get the RPO right. Like, there was meat left on the bone for sure. And also, I don't think Texas's wide receivers are elite one-on-one route running, going to go get open against those type of cornerbacks. Like, in 9 of the next 11 games, they're going to be perfectly fine, I think. But in Georgia, maybe Oklahoma, Florida's defense has some athletes. Like, in those type of games, I don't know if Texas wide receivers are going to go like win a bunch of one-on-one matchups. It's going to have to be scheme, and it's going to have to be reading it correctly. And Arch just didn't. His head was swimming. Like, it wasn't just a physical thing. It wasn't just a mental thing. Like, both of them combined to be what you would expect or what you would hope is the worst performance you're going to see. Like, it only can go up from here, because that was as bad as you could get.
I've seen a lot of Texas fans go on social media and say, like, hey, this is what Colt McCoy did against Ohio State in one of his first starts, and their stats are somewhat similar. And I don't remember what Colt McCoy looked like in that start against Ohio State, but the stats were better than what it looked like on the game.
I was at that game. I think the difference is that felt like it was because Ohio State's defense was effing insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you watched the 2006 game or whatever that was.
06, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2006. Sorry, I'm getting old. You watched that game, and I was in the stands, and it was just like nobody's scoring on Ohio State ever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
This defense, like maybe like the Houston Yates defense or the Chicago Bears, like, this is going to be one of these all-time. It just felt like Texas could have had 13 quarters and would have not gotten to 30 points. Like, it did not matter what Texas would have done that day. This didn't feel that way to me. This didn't feel like Ohio State is just so good that Texas has no chance of scoring here. Get Arch against other teams, and this thing's going to the moon. Like, it felt like a fundamentally Texas offense problem. That's not to take anything away from Ohio State's defense. They have the best defensive player in the country. I would imagine 6, 7 of those guys end up being NFL draft picks. Like, it's Ohio State. They have a shit ton of talent. But this felt more of a, holy crap, Arch Manning's not as good as we all thought he was going to be.
Yep.
And that, I don't know if that gets fixed in a week. It may look like it gets fixed in a week because they're playing San Jose State and Sam Houston and UTEP. But I don't know. I just don't think he's what we thought he was. And that recalibrates what you think Texas is going to be. It has to.
And the thing is, too, like, I don't care what he looks like for the next 5 games until the Oklahoma game. That is when I'm tuning back in to, like, say, is Arch the guy I thought he was? Because if he goes out and stunts on UTEP and Sam Houston, I don't care.
Yeah. I think it's fair.
I will always remember his deer in the headlights approach in Ohio State in the horseshoe. And I think a lot of Texas fans will.
The week before against Florida, I think is the next one. But we'll see what the Gators are.
Yeah. The crazy thing about all this is with how bad the offense was, Texas has the ball with a chance to go win the game.
Yeah, defense is incredible. Like the Texas defense is absolutely incredible. They have new guys that are really good. I mean,
Grayson Littleton, dude,
he was
true
the highest,
freshman.
He was the highest graded player at PFF for Texas, like on offense or defense. Like the highest graded player for Texas against Ohio State was a true freshman secondary player who I don't know how you keep off the field. Just absolutely loaded on that side of the ball. And that was without Colin Simmons having like a hugely impactful day. Really good at all three levels, going to keep them in every single game. That's why I say like Arch Manning doesn't have to be what we thought. He doesn't have to be a Heisman Trophy finalist. He doesn't have to be the best quarterback in the SEC. Like Texas can go win this with above average quarterback play. The problem is that wasn't even above average quarterback play, but that defense is incredible. One of the best units I've ever seen.
But that fourth quarter though, that's the thing with Arch is he's always going to have one of those throws that I'm right back in, you know?
We'll see. We will see. Check back in October 4th against Florida, and we will find out.
Yeah. I also think a difference between Texas and these other big time programs like Ohio State and I guess I won't say Alabama now after that Florida State game, but like Texas versus Ohio State, and I know it's in the horseshoe and it's a home game for Ohio State, but they have like all the national champions on their sideline. Like what's the guy's name? Will Howard. Sorry. Will Howard is there. JT Tuimoloau is there, coaching the guys up on the sideline. And Texas has Matthew McConaughey literally standing next to the offensive coordinator like he's calling in plays. And that reminds me of what they did versus Georgia last year, where it's like the regular season game in Austin. This is supposed to be like Texas is going to become the new Death Star. And they got Joe Rogan and Kill Tony and Shane Gillis is out there. It's like, there's too many celebrity guys around Texas and not enough former players around. I mean, I know Texas has a lot of good former players out there that come to the program, but like, I don't know. Do you agree with this take, this half-baked take I'm giving you right now? Like, why do we have Matthew McConaughey like calling plays from the sideline?
It's always been Texas's knock when they're not winning, right? Is that they're soft. They're kind of a celebrity program. Glenn Powell's walking around. He's a lot smaller than I thought he was. That's what I'm always shocked by with these actors. You know, you watch their movies and you're like, wow, that guy's huge. He's in shape, he's, badass or whatever, and then you see him in person. You're like, you're 5'7". Like, what is happening here? Mm-hmm. I think Texas is it's one of those deals where for a long time, Texas's knock was they're going to lose a game or two that they're not supposed to. And Sark, for the most part, has eliminated that. Like, they don't have a ton of like bottom out performances where you're like, what the hell was that? How did they just lose to Kansas? Or, they've gotten over kind of that. The next thing is beating those 3 or 4 teams that look just like you. He's built a roster that looks different than 99% of college football. And they've done a great job of getting up for those games against that 99 and using that talent advantage to go win. It's like the 5-star culture versus the 5-star talent. Like he's got both now, and that stopped him from losing the Iowa States of the world and the Kansas. It's also not playing a Big 12 schedule, so I guess you don't have to play those teams anymore. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The next thing for this football team, and I think the harder thing to do, is to now go beat those teams that are also NFL light, right? That like you don't have this huge personnel advantage. Like you're going to have to go win in the margins. So far, 3-8 against those type of teams, like he hasn't done that. And that's the thing holding Texas back right now.
Mm-hmm. That and the fact that Arch does this like all the time with his arm.
I think his arm's hurt.
I don't want to guess on injuries, but like,
I don't know.
Because I will say that in like this windmill, like quick motion he does with his arm, like in between the snaps, I feel like he did that as a freshman too. Like, I feel like I remember seeing that, but
it was just a tick of some kind.
Yeah, but that with the sidearm stuff too, like, I don't know. I'm not going to guess on an injury here, but at the same time, the way he's throwing the ball, like underthrowing people.
It was weird.
Weird game all around. Let's take it to Friday night. Baylor falls to Auburn 38-24 in the season opener. And coming into this game, I think we were both really concerned about Auburn's wide receivers against Baylor's secondary. But to borrow a phrase from Nick Saban, Auburn ran through their ass like shit through a tin horn. The Tigers had 308 yards and 4 touchdowns, led by Jackson Arnold, who was looking like prime Cam Newton with 137 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground.
Yeah. Who knew Jackson Arnold was Tim Tebow? Auburn averaged 5.9 yards a carry. Baylor was at 2.7. Baylor allowed 4 sacks. They just got beat in the trenches. Like it was a bad day for those of us who like to make fun of the SEC for always bragging about how big and bad they are.
Mm-hmm.
Like Auburn went and SEC'd the Big 12 team. Like they bullied them. Like they just beat them up in the trenches. I thought the Baylor defensive line would be better. Losing Jackie Marshall kind of early in that game didn't help. It felt like Baylor knew they were at such a disadvantage of the run game that they were just sending linebacker, like just trying to guess. They were out of position a lot. They didn't adjust to Jackson Arnold's just legs and just what he was able to do offensively. Not good. I think the only real bright spot, the only thing I think, that offense had a lot of yards. Caden Knighton, the backup running back, who's a true freshman, looked good, and they needed a second running back with Dawson Pendergrass out. But kind of like how we talked about with Texas, the red zone didn't help either. They had 17 points and 5 trips in the red zone. Like you're just not going to win that way.
So we'll go to the offense too, because there's a lot of positives over there. I don't think you can say much positive about this defense right now.
Yeah.
And can you blame this on personnel with Jackie Marshall leaving the game in the second series with a high ankle sprain? Because I did listen to Aranda's press conference, and he was like, Jackie Marshall has the ability to play 2 gaps where you can play 3 down fronts and stuff like that. You had to go more 4 down with Jackie Marshall out, although that would kind of tell me you should stop the run better. And then Carl Williams, who's a good run stuffer at nickelback, did not play. So is it personnel, or is it what I'm leaning towards, like Hugh Freeze cooked Dave Aranda?
Yeah, Hugh Freeze cooked Dave Aranda. And, I would say it was personnel, or I could lean towards that being the case if this wasn't kind of par for the course for his tenure so far. Like, I'm always concerned when the side of the ball that you coach as a head coach isn't good.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Steve Sarkisian, the offense better be good. If you're Dave Aranda, the defense better be good. And in 4 out of the 5 years he's been the head coach at Baylor, they've given up over 20 points and been in the 60s or worse in scoring defense. They have not been like, I thought it would always look like 2021, where the offense would have kind of, I don't know. That looks like an offense that's coached that has a head coach who's a defensive guy, right? Like, and they would win games that way, 21-17. It would be kind of an Iowa in the Big 12 type of deal, right? Like they'd look like Utah or something. But instead, the offense has been the best part of Baylor's seasons the last few years, and the defense has sucked. Like the defense has not been good, and they were bad again in a big test, in an important game, not only for Baylor, but for the Big 12. Baylor got bullied in a way that the Big 12 is always made fun of for hypothetically getting bullied. And that is not great.
And that feels indicative of Aranda's tenure too, where they had the chrome helmets, they had the blackout for this game. They're building it up, and then they kind of fall flat in a game they put a lot of emphasis on. And that even happened in the game too. Like they couldn't get out of their own way. They allowed a kickoff return touchdown after cutting the lead 24-17. Then Bryson Washington has a 50-yard run called back. So every time they, here we go, Baylor. They got some momentum here. They just shoot themselves in their own foot.
Dave Aranda has been the head coach for 5 full seasons. The defense has allowed, on average, 26.86 points per game in his tenure.
Yeah, not good.
Not good, especially when that's your bread and butter. If you're an offensive guy who, like, if that happened for Eric Morris's teams, it'd be like, well, yeah, they run 1,000 plays. They're up tempo. He's going to score 40, 50 points a game. High 20s, not great statistically, but like that's how the flow of the game. That's not what Dave Aranda was hired to do. Like Dave Aranda was hired to win the way that they won in 2021. And whether it's personnel, which is also on the head coach by this point, or it's schematic or whatever it is, it's on Aranda. Like his side of the ball is keeping Baylor from living up to their expectations. That can't continue. Like that has to stop.
Is it me living too much in the moment to say I don't know if Dave Aranda's the guy right now after that first game? Because to me, if Jake Spavital, an offensive coordinator, doesn't come in last year, Aranda's already gone.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
The defense was not great last year either.
I think if Dave Aranda was a less likable human, he wouldn't have made it to the Texas Tech game last year.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He would have been fired at 2-4. I think most programs would have fired their head coach at 2-4. But he's a great guy. He's somebody that Baylor wants to represent them. He has a huge buyout. That's another part of this as well. In an era where you need money to pay the players and stuff, like I think that was a huge help for Aranda. But you're right. I mean, the offense saved his job last year, and you just can't keep asking the offense to do that. Like eventually, your side of the ball has to be good, and his side of the ball has not been good for most of his tenure.
So let's talk about the offensive side of the ball, because there's a lot of positives there. I mean, Baylor is loaded at wide receiver. Their passing offense is going to be scary.
Cole Wilson was awesome.
Dude, Cole Wilson, 8 catches for 134 yards. Michael Trigg, who had 7 for 99, a touchdown, and carried the entire Auburn defense on his back.
Yeah.
Like, they were lighting it up, and Josh Cameron was invisible for the first 3.5 quarters. And he was their best receiver last year. They're still lighting it up.
Yeah, every week one since I've gotten this job, there's like a player or two that plays bad, and it's like, why did I have him on the All-Texas team? Or a player that plays really well, and you're like, well, how did I not see that coming? Like, I should have had it. Michael Trigg immediately was like, God, I'm a doofus. RJ Maryland's listed as a wide receiver for SMU. Michael Trigg's going for like 100 yards, and it's like, you idiot. You know, like, how did you not? But yeah, really good. A big mismatch. Like, Baylor's going to score a bunch of points. Mm-hmm. Baylor's offense is going to be top 25 scoring offense, going to be a huge yard gainer. They're going to be in football games. Like, it's not going to be the offense. Like, that side of the ball is going to be fine as long as injuries don't just crush them over there. I did think the offensive line was going to be better.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just think they were overmatched. I think they were overmatched in the trenches on both sides of the football, and it gave them very little chance. The red zone is where it reared its head the most. Yeah,
the offensive line allowed 4 sacks. So Robertson minus 19 yards rushing. And I think almost every offensive lineman had a penalty too, which is not great. And then 64 total rushing yards. Now, a lot of that was because they were playing from behind, but they did not establish the run very well. I'm also concerned still about the Dawson Pendergrass injury, because I know Caden Knighton looked really good, but he's still a true freshman. And Bryson Washington was out for a couple series with an injury. And it's like, the Dawson Pendergrass injury is so substantial because now you're one bad play for Bryson Washington from being in a world of hurt.
Yeah, your starting running back will be a true freshman if Bryson Washington gets hurt. And it's fine to have Knighton as your number 2. I think that's okay. But yeah, the Pendergrass injury means that you're one sprained ankle, one wrong hit, and it's a violent position. Like, we all know that about running back. They're going to be thin there, and it's just going to put more and more on Sawyer. But I think he's fine with it. I think, like we mentioned, with all the wide receivers, with Trigg, like, they can pass their ball to a Big 12 championship game. I'm just not sure that they can stop the run. And in the Big 12, which has this reputation from like Mike Leachy and Big 12, it's not that anymore. Like, they're going to play some teams. Like, I mean, Avery Johnson's coming to town, right? Like, they're going to have some teams where they got to stop the run. And they failed the first test of the year miserably.
How about next week when SMU and Kevin Jennings comes to town?
Yeah.
Kevin Jennings can run.
Yep.
That's a mobile quarterback.
Yeah. They're going to have to figure that out, because that's going to be game plan number 1 against Baylor until they prove that they can stop it. Just run the ball 35, 40 times a game and see what happens.
My last take on Baylor was, I think too many guys switch numbers on their team. It was really confusing for me. Like Bryson Washington at number 7, Cooper Lance number 9.
I hate it. It's like school, like, pick your seat, sit in your seat. Like, pick your number, stay in your number. What are we doing?
Although Bryson Washington looks massive in a good way in number 7.
Yeah, he's a stud.
He looks like a creative player out there.
Yeah. He's one of the only players on Baylor that like looks like he could play at Auburn. You know, the body types won. It doesn't always win, but the body types absolutely won on Friday night.
Any other thoughts on Baylor before we go lightning round through the rest of the state? I mean, do you change your outlook on Baylor now after that first game?
I had started to cool a little bit. I don't know if it was noticeable.
It was a little noticeable.
I think they're a 7-5, 8-4 football team, and I still think that that's probably where they're at. But they could be 2-4 to start the year again because of the way the schedule lines up.
All right, let's breeze through some of these. Well, not some of these. Most of the last games in the state of Texas. A lot of teams playing some lesser competition, we should say, and took care of business. So that's always good to see from the Texas schools. In week one, things can get weird, but for the most part, it didn't. Except this one. Texas A&M beats UTSA 42-24. Was not such a nice and easy stress-free win because at one point in this game was 21-17 in the third quarter, and Robert Henry had 12 carries for 170 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, on the UTSA side, they looked physically up for that game. Like it didn't look like they were overwhelmed in the trenches on the offensive side or the defensive side of the ball. Like UTSA ran the ball with a lot of success, and they didn't allow A&M to run the ball with a ton of success. Only allowed 108 yards while rushing for 203. So they won the trenches there in that way. The secondary is just, it's what we thought it was going to be. Like it's going to be bad, and they're going to need to be in shootouts. They're going to have to score a bunch of points. McCown didn't have that big of a day, but I didn't expect for him to. Like those wide receivers are solid, but they're not get open against Will Lee and Julian Humphrey and Des Ricks solid. Like those different level of athletes just couldn't get any separation. It's harder to pass block a lot of time. I think counterintuitively, a lot of times we think that the G5s can't like run the ball, but really it's like they can't handle the edge rushers and just the overall like speed and dynamicism on the outside. So I'm not at all where I thought UTSA looked good. Like that's a win. They didn't turn the ball over. They didn't have any pre-snap penalties. I know that was big for Jeff Traylor. A&M, you got to be pretty excited if you walk out of that game just knowing that your transfers hit.
Yeah, those receivers are nice.
Really good. Mario Craver, 8 catches, 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. Casey Concepcion with the 80-yard punt return, like instant return on investment on the outside, and that allowed Marcel Reed to have a really good day.
Are you raised eyebrow at all about Marcel Reed having 34 pass attempts and also being the leading rusher, and Ruben Owens having 5 carries and Le'Veon Moss having 3 carries?
I first guessed this on the Aggie War Pod, and I cannot wait to record it Monday night with Jay Arnold because he poo-pooed this when I brought it up, but I had my tinfoil hat on and I nailed it. You could always lean on the run game against this UTSA, right? Like you were going to win this football game. I know coaches can't think like that or at least say it out loud, but I think they felt like they could. This was the type of secondary to go build that confidence in. You want to see what you have in Concepcion. You want to see what you have in Craver. This defensive secondary is one of the worst in the country. It was really bad last year. It doesn't look like it's much better this year. If not now, then when, in terms of like building that confidence in Marcel Reed. I told Jay, I was like, if I'm Colin Klein, I'm 60-40 past the ball. Like I'm throwing the ball 30, 40 times. I'm getting those guys, big numbers, a lot of confidence. Now you're going into week 2 with a bunch of confidence. Like you want to go into Notre Dame feeling really good about your pass game. You can't go to South Bend and figure it out then, and like Le'Veon Moss is coming off of an injury. Ruben Owens is coming off multiple injuries. It just felt like one of those games to just get their sea legs back, let them have the ball 5 to 10 times, and then just let Marcel Reed and those wide receivers go make plays because they're better than UTSA secondary. And that's what they did. I don't think that's what it'll look like when they're playing. I can't remember what their first big conference game is, but like whenever they're playing Florida or South Carolina or Auburn, I think that it will look like what we thought the offense will like. It'll be more 60-40 run, but this was the game. This was the time to go allow Marcel Reed to build that confidence. And they did.
How concerned are you about this Aggie run defense? Because Mike Elko wasn't concerned. He kind of chalked it up to some guys playing first snaps in new spots and not fitting it right. And look, Mike Elko will let you know when he doesn't think his defense is up to par in a press conference. Like he will call specific position groups or part of his team out. And he wasn't. So he wasn't concerned, but are you?
I am. I
am too.
I don't think it's like DEFCON 5, sound the alarms, A&M's defense is going to suck. But you got to play Jeremiah Love in a couple weeks. on the road Notre Dame, and that Notre Dame's got the best offensive line in the country and probably the best running back in the country. Like, you got to figure it out by then, and that's not very far from now. Auburn, as we just talked about with Baylor, can run the football. South Carolina, run the football. Hell, Texas might be an 80-20 run the football team if that's what the passing offense looks like the whole year. So you're going to have to stop the run to reach your ceiling as an SEC program. If UTSA runs the ball like that on you, what is everybody else going to do?
It's a fair question to ask, I think. All right. Is that it we got for Texas A&M UTSA? That's all I have for it.
Yeah, I will say Marcel Reed had a very successful day, but if you look into the numbers, it was mostly on throws that were 10 yards or fewer. Like, I don't think the vertical passing game at A&M is fixed. I think they have wide receivers that can take 8-yard passes and turn them into 60-yard touchdowns, and that's going to be how they get big plays.
Yeah, and that is something to keep an eye out for, because I think he missed one to Casey Concepcion too, a big deep ball he tried to throw there. All right. Speaking of A&M quarterbacks, Houston with Connor Wegman blanks Stephen F. Austin 27-0 in the first shutout win in a season opener since 1989. Any thoughts here, Craven?
Yeah, Tanner Kozel, dude, the big tight end that they got who had a cup of coffee at Wisconsin and played in the MAC last year. 6'7", just this real deal, just an absolute difference maker. Had 7 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. Really good. Wegman looked fine. Threw for 3 touchdowns. Didn't make any big mistakes. But they ran the ball 46 times and threw the ball 27 times. And I honestly think that's what Houston's going to look like this year. Like, I think Wegman is going to be a part of the offense. He's not going to be the offense. It's going to be mostly this run game. Dean Connors, I love watching that guy play.
Thank you, Dean.
Those are my notes.
All right, SMU. No, actually, sorry, not going to SMU yet. Going to another Big 12 team. Texas Tech obliterates Arkansas Pine Bluff 67-7. And the game was shortened to 2 8-minute quarters after halftime because of a 90-minute weather delay. Baron Morton was dealing 16 of 18 for 201 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he had to leave the game after a tough sack with a hyperextended knee. I think he's going to be okay, but something to monitor.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like anything's broken or structural. I think we'll know more Monday. Sometimes it's a swelling deal, where it's just like, let's see how fast the swelling goes down. They don't have a tough schedule. They play Kent State, who was the worst team in the country last year, who almost lost to a program I had never heard of until this week. And then it's Oregon State after that, both at home. So maybe this is one of those where you let Will Hammond start against Kent State, and then you see what Morton's like going into the Oregon State game. They don't have a real test until they're on the road September 20th against Utah. Like what I saw again from the offense, I really enjoy the way Mac Leftwich coaches a game and the balance that they have. It was 28 runs to 30 passes. They averaged like 10 yards a carry. So I think that Tech offense is going to be more explosive. It's going to be more balanced. Going to be a lot of fun to watch, but you got to keep Morton healthy.
SMU takes care of East Texas A&M 42-13. Kevin Jennings had a 63-yard touchdown pass to Romello Brinson on the 3rd play of the game, and Brinson backflipped into the end zone, and that was about the ball game right there.
It was a sloppy game. Like, SMU turned the ball over 3 times. It definitely looked like an opener in which they probably didn't take the opponent off. I bet they prepared for Baylor more than they prepared for East Texas A&M during this last week. I think the big things to watch coming out of this is Jordan Hudson and Alex Kilgore both left the game with injuries, just kind of what they're going to be like. You need them against Baylor. You need them against TCU.
Yes, 100%. Definitely some health concerns to monitor from both Texas Tech and SMU coming out of week 1. All right, let's take it to the group of 6 conferences. Rice upsets Louisiana 14-12 in Scott Abel's first game. The Owls had 206 rushing yards to 45 passing yards, headlined by Quentin Jackson's 119 rushing yards.
Yeah, Rice ran 64 plays, 55 of them were runs.
I love it.
Just God's
inject
football.
into my veins.
Absolutely. They were shut out in 3 of the 4 quarters and still won. They scored 14 points in the second quarter, and that's how they won. Shout out to John Kay, Texas high school coach and legend at Galena Park North Shore. That defense looked really, really good, swarmed around the field. Defense forced 2 turnovers. That was a big key in the game. Rice, two of their next 3 games, they play Houston next week. But then after that, it's Prairie View, A&M, and Charlotte. Can I interest you in 3-1 Rice going to Navy? And so like the Owls, they stole a win. The early schedule sets up for them to build a little bit of momentum and figure out that offense. A big win for Abel and those boys.
We'll do a 2-hour podcast about Rice versus Navy preview.
Yeah,
if that's how it sets up.
The game may last shorter than the podcast. Then with both with 55 runs versus 55 runs, that's like the perfect game to cover. Like if you asked a media like that is the ideal game. Like 2 options. Like I'm always jealous of like Grantland Rice and the old school reporters that like 2.5 hours, 2 hours, no commercials on TV, and you just watch the game like run the ball all the time. That's going to be a historically short game.
Yeah, but then you had to take your horse and buggy back home. So
that's true. It took you a long time to get home and to get there. That's a fair point.
So John Kay had a spectacular debut at defensive coordinator, and so did Skylar Cassidy at UNT because the North Texas Mean Green blank Lamar 51-0. First shutout victory in 22 seasons.
Yeah. Since 2003, Carter, I graduated high school in 2003. That's a long time ago. Defense looked really good. I mean, it's Lamar, so I don't want to like hang the banner yet, but they didn't look good against teams like Lamar the last 2 seasons on the defensive side of the football. So you'll take wins when you can get them. I think Cassidy's a really good coach, obviously. So they've improved on that side. Drew Mestemaker, what the hell? I mean, like, how good were the Vandergrift quarterbacks that were keeping him playing safety? Because my Lord, the kid is a baller. 329 passing yards, 4 total touchdowns. Just a stud, man. He's just a really good football player.
I'm pretty sure it was. So I think it was Deuce Adams.
Yeah, but they had good ones. But man, the idea that this type of quarterback is regulated to safety at Vandergrift. And you got to remember, Carter, I'm from Cedar Park. Like I know the Vandergrift area. It is basically just like Westlake North, I guess, or Lake Travis North, right? You just cross the dam and you're in Vandergrift right there. It's the rich part of Cedar Park. They've always had really good quarterbacks, but to have one that just kind of slips through the cracks and never even starts for you, that is now like a quarterback for what's going to be one of the more prolific offenses in the country. Just a really cool story.
Yeah, it is remarkable. Let's take it over to Texas State now. They dominated Eastern Michigan 52-27. Big offensive output with 606 yards of total offense. That's 392 rushing yards. And then Brad Jackson and Bo Sparks connect for 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, that was big. This was 24-17 at halftime. So a pretty close game at the break, and then the Bobcats scored 28 of the next 31 to start the second half. Eastern Michigan had a late touchdown that made it closer, but really just pulled away in the second half. Secondary was shaky. Bet the over of the Texas State UTSA game. Like that's my only real prediction for next week between those two. Like it is going to be pointsy because both of those secondaries, I think, stink. Like I don't think we have to like sugarcoat it. I think those are the weaknesses of both of those football teams. But they both ran the ball really well. Like Lincoln Perry had an awesome game, 167 yards on 12 carries, 3 different running backs with rushing touchdowns for Texas State. We know Brad Jackson can run the ball when he's asked to. I think that's what the Bobcats are going to be this year. They had 39 rushing attempts. I think they're going to be, again, they quietly have been the last couple of years, but I think they're going to be a really good run the football team and probably a heavier run team than we usually think of a GJ Kinney offense being.
All right, we're going to have to end the podcast on a bit of a down note in Conference USA. We'll start with UTEP losing 28-16 to Utah State. There are some moments in there that are positive. Of course, Kenny Odom having career high 9 catches for 97 yards and a touchdown. Then that defense coordinated by Bobby Daly had 6 sacks, but the Miners fall just short against Utah State.
Yeah, didn't get a force a turnover, so they lost a turnover battle, and that's big on the road in these games. Kind of a weird call. Utah State scored a touchdown to take the lead in the first half, and it looked like the ball carrier like clearly went out of bounds. And they even reviewed it, and the play stood. It was kind of this weird momentum change for Utah State, and they never really looked back. I like some of the glimpses I saw from Malachi Nelson. Like, I think you got to take the reins off and just let him go. He's going to make some mistakes. He's kind of got a little bit of a gunslinger mentality to him where I can see as a coach why he didn't win a couple jobs where you're just like, man, you're throwing the ball into some spaces that you probably shouldn't have thrown it. But he also has some really good arm talent. We saw a deep touchdown pass that I don't think any other quarterback on the UTEP roster could make. But for me, it's still the running the ball. Like they just, 2.9 yards a rush. Like everything's out wide. Everything's east-west. Like they're just not able to get into like 2nd and 4 very often. And that makes it really hard on this kind of fast-paced tempo offense to get into a rhythm.
Mm-hmm. I'd miss the days of quarterbacks having like 45 touchdowns and 18 interceptions.
Yeah, he could be one of those like 30-15 guy. He's going to throw an interception or two a game, but he also could throw you into some wins, especially if you can't run the football.
All right, now rounding it out with Sam Houston. They fall 38-21 to UNLV. The Sam Houston defense allowed 24 unanswered points and 404 total yards. Seems like this might be the story of the season.
Yeah, same thing kind of happened with Western Kentucky where, they were in the game in the third quarter and then just couldn't stay with it. Some of that's probably depth. Obviously, a lot of new players there. Not really sure what was up with benching Hunter Watson for a little bit. And then, the other quarterback comes in there and throws like a weird interception that went viral that got taken back for a touchdown. We knew the defense was going to take a step back. You lose, what was it? Their top 16 tacklers from last year and their defensive coordinator. Like we knew the defense wasn't going to be better. It was going to be worse, but we thought the offense would be a little bit better. And they only had 7 points through 3 quarters. Like it ended up looking like they scored some points, but they only had 7 points through 3 quarters on the UNLV defense that wasn't good in week 0 against an FCS team. So just no real flow. You can see Longo like seriously frustrated on the sidelines, like in a way that in week 2, you probably shouldn't be that frustrated yet. I have very low hopes that Sam Houston gets to like 4 wins. It's going to be a long season. Good news, you get to go to Hawaii. Bad news, you got to fly all the way to Hawaii for the next game. Like the travel's not going to help either. So new coach, new players, new systems, shit ton of travel. Like I think Sam Houston's going to have a very, very tough year.
All right, that'll do it for week 1. Honestly, I know at the top, Texas and Baylor fell, but pretty entertaining. Week 1 is just good to have football back on TV.
Yeah, G6 programs did really well. Texas lost, Baylor lost. That kind of colored the P4 ranks there. But I do think we have 3 super talented G5 teams, and then Rice just kind of being interesting. We'll see if UTEP can join that mix as well. And then, we're recording this Sunday afternoon. TCU plays North Carolina Monday night. That's going to be a pivotal game. It's another one that's important, not only for TCU, but for the Big 12 in terms of perception, playing against Bill Belichick, all the eyes on a Monday night. Fascinated to see what happens with Sunday night Tykes' crew.
We'll do a full week 2 preview on Wednesday, but just early look ahead, Craven, any games you're really excited about?
Yeah, I think there's 2 kind of big games in the state in week 2. Obviously, Baylor going to SMU is a huge one. Would have been a bigger game had Baylor beaten Auburn, but still a big game inside the state. SMU gets tested for the first time. But I think the biggest game in the state, I'm a little biased, obviously, especially let Twitter tell it. I'm very biased. Texas State at UTSA, going to be awesome. Both teams really good. I know UTSA did win in week 1, but I think they left it feeling pretty good about themselves. I think that was true for Texas State as well. So last year's didn't live up to the hype. Maybe this year will, and we'll get a pointsy, high scoring, back and forth affair. So I think both offenses can score points and both secondaries can allow them.
All right, that'll do it for the week 1 recap for Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I am Carter Yates. That is Mike Craven. We will see you on Wednesday for a week 2 preview.